I'm Tom Baker, and on this episode of Chasing Cars, we're saying a sad farewell to a legend, the Audi TT. Long one of my favorite small sports cars, the Audi TT's recipe has been relatively simple. Basically use the underlying chassis of the A3, or the Volkswagen Golf, often combined with Quattro all-wheel drive surety for a fun, light little pocket rocket with just 2 doors. Audi's talking about maybe doing another TT in future as an electric sedan crossover thing with 4 doors. That's not the spirit of the original TT, which is one of the best looking cars of my childhood. And even in the latest generation TT, Audi really stuck to that crisp, small, as light as they could make it sort of philosophy in this vehicle, and I have loved that. Now, if that means that I'm biased, if that means that I'm admitting to liking the TT a little bit more than some other cars, I'm happy to accept that because this vehicle is at the end of its line. I'm still going to do my best to give you a critical review of this car because there's a lot that the TT does not do right and a lot of ways that it does feel like the aged product that it now is. But if you were sitting on the fence about a TT, if you've always thought, man, I'd love one of those in my life, well, you better run to an Audi dealer because this is your last shot. It is no longer the perfect TT spec. Audi is basically throwing the parts they've got left at this vehicle. I'll explain what all of that means and why you should consider it anyway. Before we get started, hit subscribe below. Chasing Cars, honest reviews of your next car. Brought to you by Budget Direct. Welcome to what I think is my favorite car interior currently on sale. On sale for at least the next 5 minutes or whenever Audi finishes selling out the TT Final Edition here in Australia. This cabin is fantastic, and in many ways it's one of the last gasps of old Audi from the previous generation when they were hitting their absolute highs in terms of material selection and build quality. Current gen Audis, they're still pretty good, pretty competitive, but the old ones were better, and this TT comes from that old generation. So sure, there are some things that are a bit dated, no USB-C ports, and you have to plug in a cable for your Apple CarPlay. I think we can probably get over that because the materials, the quality, and the presentation are from the top rung of the ladder. Now you may notice there is no screen for the passenger. Nope. The TT is driver focused. So you get a 12-inch virtual cockpit in front of you, which has all of your infotainment running through it, including Apple CarPlay, which is presented on this screen right here rather than over where everyone else can see it. So you're manipulating this screen with the fabulous feeling, beautifully damped controls on this gorgeous steering wheel, or with Audi's old MMI rotary dial here between the seats. This car's like a fantastic blast from the past. I absolutely love the way the tech works. No concessions to the modern era of screens everywhere. You get one and it does the job perfectly. I suppose technically you actually get a few more because here in these really cool aviation style air vents, you do have little built-in screens for your temperature, fan speed, and where you want the air to go. But again, really beautifully simple, and listen to that. Oh yeah. Audi doesn't quite hit those highs anymore. Everything is damped and burled and knurled and just gorgeous in the interior. You even get a proper automatic transmission selector rather than a silly little toggle that Audi is starting to put into a bunch of their new cars. So if you want an old gen Audi, this TT fits the bill pretty nicely. The A4 is also pretty good still in that regard. Now the steering wheel is half Alcantara, half leather. You've also got a little 0-degree marker up here. This vehicle has been optioned with the Turbo Blue stitching package, so you've got diamond quilting on the super comfy, supportive Napa leather seats, which do have inflatable side bolsters. They hold you in really nicely in the corners, and the driving position is very good. Not quite excellent, because we are in an Audi based on the Transverse MQB platform. The front overhang's pretty short, the pedal box is pretty short, so your legs aren't stretched out in front of you in like a Porsche 911, but it's all still pretty good, and the seat goes nice and low. The materials, outstanding. Everything is screwed together just beautifully. You can tell the care that went into engineering this car, which is just lovely. Practicality, probably not a strong suit. You've got a box up here with your wireless phone charging. You've got one cup holder here. You've got an extra sort of spot with a half cup holder down there. Tiny door bins and a gym bag holder, which was a nice thought. The specs do say it's a seat, but the back seats in this car are absolutely tiny. They're purely theoretical, much like in a Toyota 86, so I just use that as additional storage. Now, moving around the back of the Audi TT Final Edition, we still have this classic shape, which is such a gorgeous element of Audi's little sports car. But as I mentioned, the Final Edition has been festooned with the S-Line Competition Plus package, which means this mandatory black spoiler. Now, a couple of people that I asked in my travels about the car really loved this. As you know, I'm pretty cynical, don't really like my black packs, so I could certainly live without this spoiler. But frankly, this is the only way the TT now comes. So if you want one, you're getting a spoiler. I guess you could take it off and kind of fill in the gaps or whatever that was left over. This color is turbo blue. It's one of 4 remaining colors. You've got a blue, a red, a gray, and a white. That is it. Now, as standard, the Final Edition comes with 18s. This car's got the optional 19s. I would suggest sticking with the 18s for the good of the ride quality. Now, we have a manual tailgate and like a half decent boot. 305 litres is the official capacity. It's obviously very sloping, but you do get a net included, which is definitely nice to stop your stuff from rolling around. That finds 4 tie-down points in the boot, and then beneath that floor, you've actually got your battery to help balance the weight a little bit better in this car. You get a privacy screen for your stuff, and you can also fold those rear seats down to create about 700 litres of space. Probably still wouldn't want to move house in this vehicle, but it is more practical than something like a Toyota 86. Now, the running costs of the Audi TT are perhaps not quite as sharp as you might expect for something so small. That starts with fuel consumption. Now, you still get this absolutely gorgeous matte aluminium fuel filler cap, which pops out of the way and reveals a capless filler, which is always a nice luxury feature. It also reminds you 95 octane premium petrol or better is required by this vehicle. Now, the TT 45 TFSI, which is the powertrain we've got here, just uses that classic Volkswagen Group EA888 2-litre turbo engine, which is very economical on the highway. You should expect to get into the 6s, maybe low 7s without too much trouble. But in town or on country roads where you're hammering this thing, it can get a little thirsty. I'm into the 12 or 13 litres per 100 kilometre range, which is probably a little more than you'd expect for a car like this. Likewise, servicing, not the cheapest. Around $3,500 for 5 years or 75,000 kilometers if you purchase a care plan from Audi. However, a 5-year unlimited kilometer warranty does apply to every TT. All right, let's take a drive in the Audi TT Final Edition. Ooh, sounds pretty fruity, even though this is the base powertrain. What? In Europe, their Final Edition was based on a TTS, which was always kind of the sweet spot for me in the TT range. The American Final Edition was a TT Roadster, always kind of cool. Here in Australia, we sort of got a bit of a vanilla Final Edition, just the 45 TFSI, which was our base powertrain. Still a pretty decent engine, but basically it's a 45 TFSI with 180 kilowatts of power, 370 Newton meters of torque, and Quattro all-wheel drive, with a whole bunch of cosmetic stuff tacked on. So the S-Line Competition Plus package with all the black stuff outside, the spoiler, the black wheels. Inside you got Napa leather and a bunch of niceties, the Alcantara wheel, but just things like standard audio, standard passive dampers. So it's not a particularly flashy spec. So that means we can kind of see the TT in its element, in its effectively standard form here in Australia, and be reminded of just how good a regular Audi TT was. The RS with the 5-cylinder, that was always a real standout in terms of fun, but even the regular TTs were just fantastic, and that's kind of what I'm getting to experience probably for the last time today. Now, this is a classic Sydney autumn day. It's been raining, it's not been raining, and this country road that we're testing on is half dry, half wet, and this is the element for the TT. This reminds you of why this is actually a really special small sports car, because it has gobs of grip, masses of character, and it's easy to drive. I think a lot of people are drawn to small rear-wheel drive sports cars like the BMW 2 Series, another favorite of mine, but the TT does things a little bit differently. Now, it is based on a transverse architecture and front-wheel drive, but we do have the Quattro system here. Now, it's more of a reactive all-wheel drive system than Audi's best, latest stuff like the RS3 with drift mode and a twin-clutch diff. But what the TT wants, what it needs, is some pretty big, bold throttle inputs to bring its all-wheel drive system to the fore. So that's what I'm doing. I'm driving this car pretty hard. You can feel the contribution from the rear. It never feels like a Golf GTI or a front wheel drive hot hatch. It feels really neutral and easy to drive quickly. And because of all that grip, which is mostly mechanical grip from the chassis and the short wheelbase, it can be a little bit difficult to overcome that grip, though it is possible. You can get the thing to move around a bit. What I love about the TT is how it's just a really quick little pocket rocket. It really will go where you point it. Delicious quick steering, small steering wheel, and a ride quality which is about right for a car like this. It's pretty firm, I'm not going to lie to you. It's also pretty tightly sprung, so you might be able to see the vertical motions. This is a particularly difficult road. Pulling onto some smoother stuff now. You can really wind it out. I actually think that's a bit of a blessing of using the base powertrain for the Final Edition, is that it's not as quick as a TTRS or a TTS, so you can really get stuck into the loud pedal. And yeah, you know, it sounds pretty fruity. It's got a wet clutch, dual clutch S-tronic transmission, which is the more reliable type of dual clutch. You can throw it into manual, you can drive it through the paddles if you want to, or you can just kind of let it do its thing. It's a pretty good transmission, pretty well paired to the engine. You could get it with a manual up until a few years ago, and that would have been really sweet to see a manual swan song for the TT, but it wasn't to be. So basically what you can do is you can enjoy the TT in pretty pure form with the 45 TFSI Quattro powertrain. You can enjoy the super solid dynamics of this little sports car. Really do like the steering, really do like the view out. It is fun and fast to drive quickly in this vehicle. And given that the rumors are that the TT will go electric, it will, you know, it could still be cool, but it will be fundamentally different to this petrol turbo 4-cylinder all-wheel drive, you know, lighter, smaller, dartier vehicle. Now, you know, it is a little dated in some ways. It's a little rowdy in the cabin, particularly on course chip. With the safety features, they're not as bang up to the minute as everything. You know, we don't have that lane centering and that sort of thing, but at the same time, it's not binging and bonging and getting annoyed at you, which some people will really love. We still do have the basics. We have manual cruise control, we have blind spot monitoring, and we have a reversing camera. So you're not completely alone out there, but this is a fairly simple car in an era of way more sophisticated and complex vehicles, and I kind of love that about the last TT. So those are my opinions on the 2024 Audi TT 45 TFSI Final Edition. Now, this is a bit of a procrastinator's special. It's not the way that I would do my TT, but this is now all you've got. It's called Final Edition for a reason. For example, I could live without the black pack. I would want the TTS engine in this vehicle. Those options are no longer available. If you'd been organized, you would have been able to do a build in whatever engine and configuration you wanted. That is now all gone. So if you've been sitting on the fence, this is the last TT spec you'll be able to buy here in Australia. Does that really matter? Not really, because frankly, all TTs are good TTs. This thing is fun to drive. It's pretty firm, it's pretty connected to the road, but it feels light, it feels agile, and you've still got that Quattro system for classic Audi sporty feels, and I like that. And if you buy one of these vehicles, when the larger, heavier, probably 4-door electric TT eventually emerges, well, you can tell people that you bought the last of the true Audi TT. Keen to know your opinion? Let me know down below in the comments. While you're there, hit subscribe and the notification bell if you've enjoyed this video. Don't forget to check out our social media channels over on TikTok and Instagram, where we post a ton. And as always, thanks for watching Chasing Cars.